Hello everyone, welcome to Theater 14B, Westerns and Musicals. I'm your instructor, W. Clay. It's our first lecture. We want to tackle the question of what is a Western. So Western is a uniquely American genre, well almost uniquely, we'll get to some exceptions later, with relatively clear-cut conventions, and by conventions I mean rules, and these are the things that define a genre, and a genre is a film category. So the time is almost always going to be between 1870 and 1890. Place, almost always going to be west of the Mississippi, what we refer to as the frontier. The characters are going to have the cowboy, the marshal, the outlaw, the settler, the woman, the Indian, and a lot of other characters, frontier types that go along with this. And the subject matter, things such as the closing of the frontier, the railroad as easternizer, so bringing the east to the west, the uneasy truce between civilization and wilderness. These are some of the themes that are going to be dealt with in the Western. So the origins of the Western, where it came from. Our first origin is Leatherstocking Tales from the 1820s by James Fenimore Cooper. So those are stories of an original frontier hero by the name of Natty Bumppo, and that includes the Deerslayer and the Last of the Mohicans. And we'll be watching the Michael Mann version of Last of the Mohicans later in the class, which is very, very different from James Fenimore Cooper's original novel, if you've actually read it. Also, frontier painters from the 1830s to 1900s, and these are painters that actually traveled to the West and took and made paintings of a lot of the Western types, these frontier characters, and this is where we get a lot of our ideas of what the Western looks like. So most of the images of Indians, in particular Native Americans, come directly from the works of Frederick Remington, who was also a sculptor too, and George Catlin, who spent a lot of time with the Sioux, and a few other painters too. Also dime novels and pulp magazines from the 1860s to 1880s. You've heard of Pulp Fiction. Well, Westerns were a really important part of this. So popular, cheaply printed works, which often simplified the situation of the West into sensationalism and bigotry. And also you could say that James Fenimore Cooper also did that to a certain extent as well. But this was a common perception of the time. And also the Wild West show, which ran roughly from 1880 to 1900. And so you had Buffalo Bill Cody. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Buffalo Bill, who was known for slaughtering a great number of buffalo and also kind of being a gunslinger. And also they had kind of a frontier circus. So imagine what we have with circuses today and other kinds of shows. A lot of these Western type characters who are still living at this time would take this Western show and show people what it was like to be around in the Old West. And moving on to films, we have the films of Thomas Edison, the film Pioneer, so Cripple Creek Barroom from 1898, and Poker at Dawson City from 1898 as well. And these were pretty much single-shot films. They were very short, and we call them tableau shots, meaning they were kind of stage-like. You see the event, it happens, and then it's over. And then we have The Great Train Robbery by Edwin S. Porter. And some people regard this to be the first fully fledged Western. This is from 1903. And it's also a short. So there are 14 scenes in this. So rather than just the single tableau shots like we had in the work of Thomas Edison, this actually takes some of those and put them together. We also have pre-classical editing and shot structure, meaning it's pretty crudely put together, but you could definitely tell that Porter was on to something. And the narrative also foreshadows the typical Westerns. So we've got some outlaws, we've got some sheriffs, we've got some gunfights, we've got horses, a lot of the ingredients that you find in the Western we have in The Great Train Robbery. So we also want to talk about the romantic Western. This will be our first type of Western we're going to be talking about in the class. So we call it the romantic Western because it has a romance narrative, which doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be all lovey-dovey, but it means that we have a quest, an obstacle, and a prize. And we have a hero who's on the quest. He has a bunch of obstacles he has to overcome, and then there's hopefully a prize he can claim at the end. Other types of Westerns we'll be talking about and watching in the class are dystopian, elegiac, and revisionist, and we'll talk about those in greater detail when we get to them. So, one of our most important characters in the romantic Western is the romantic hero. So he's there to defeat evil and restore order, but he's also he's usually unable to remain within society, and we'll talk about that in more depth. Also, we have the villain, and the villain's going to be portrayed as evil or detrimental to society, but occasionally he'll seem very similar to the hero. So the romantic hero is there to restore order, the villain is there to destroy that, and these two are going to be in conflict. We also are going to have a heroine slash love interest. A lot of times this character is going to be from the East, so there'll be an Eastern transplant, an uneasy fit in the frontier. So a true lady is going to have a hard time fitting in on the frontier. She's going to inspire and civilize the hero, but hardly ever will get him in the end, and we'll definitely see an example of that in the film for this lesson. We also have the used woman. And this is a true frontier character. So she's going to be a little bit more like the hero than the heroine. And often she redeems her soiled honor with heroism. So she's able to actually kind of be in the trenches with the men, unlike the heroine. And a lot of times this character comes to a tragic end. We also have the half-breed. So we see a lot of this too. Characters that are conflicted by mixed race, half white, half something else. Whether it be Native American or perhaps Mexican or something else. We see this on the frontier. Unable to assimilate because of this mixed race, and often turns inadvertently to villainy or suffers victimization or martyrdom. So this is a kind of a troubling character, and this is pretty common of the treatment of various races in Westerns, which tend to be pretty retrograde. Also, the Indian, usually maligned, meaning treated very, very badly and seen as evil in so many cases, rarely personified or given motivation for villainy. So in these romantic Westerns, we have a really primitive view of Native Americans. So this lesson's film is My Darling Clementine from 1946. So this is a John Ford Western, and John Ford is thought of as being one of the greatest Western film directors, particularly romantic Westerns. And his films are going to have an emphasis on community and the importance of that, and the desert garden civilization transformation. So attempts to turn the frontier into something that people can actually live in, and the conflicts this causes. So it was shot in Monument Valley, which was also used in Stagecoach and The Searchers, and we'll be seeing it again in The Searchers later on. And, very, very important landscape, very, very beautiful, typical Western landscape. So some of the characters we've got here, we have the Earp brothers, Wyatt Earp and his brothers, and they're the good family, the restorers of order. So our hero comes from this family. Then we have the Clantons, who are the evil family, and they have no respect for order. We have Doc Holliday, who's kind of a hero, kind of a villain, kind of good, kind of bad, and he's an important character in the middle between these two groups of people. And then we have Clementine of the title, and she's the heroine, and she's the disruptor of homosociality, and that means the dealings between men, and she kind of comes in between Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday and causes some conflicts, and also inspires the two of them. And then we have Chihuahua, who is gets a double whammy because she's both the used woman and she's also a half-breed. So you can pretty much guess that nothing too good's going to happen to her, but she is a very, very important character in this film. And of course, given that it was made in the 1940s, she's also played by a glamorous white actress. So your questions this week, you'll also find these if you look in the discussion. So I'm going to go and pop them up just so you can see what they look like, and you'll actually be answering these questions in the discussion uh, for this particular lesson module. So you can go back and find those there. Anyway, good luck watching everything, and hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you folks in the next folder.